this one, I know when you get the transit stuff,
That tells
it can
me
be
You're live.
stickier and
Council
trying
meeting,
Yes.
May 1, 2018.
Well, I mean, it can make work, but it's another thing to do.
Councilor Ward, we're live.
All right, let's dispense for the, open up this workshop for the Dingley TIF, please. You gonna start?
Sure. The introduction. Good evening, Tracy Stuber, Economic and Community Development Director. To my left, I have Jim Safian. Jim is with Pierce Atwood and also is the attorney for Dingley, and he is here to give you a little bit overview of the development program. This is what the workshop is based on. So it's the Dingley TIF has already been approved and adopted. Now we're just looking at the development program so we can look at where we want to spend the revenues that come in on the TIF for projects around the town. So I'm going to pass it over to Jim.
Perfect.
Good evening. So I think what I'd like to do is maybe set the stage if I understand kind of the guidance I've gotten from Tracy and Diane about kind of what we want to accomplish, I guess, at the meeting. And let me just set the stage. If I'm missing the boat, let me know. And if I'm on target, we'll just keep going in that direction. So when we came in with the TIF amendment for this last iteration on the Dingley TIF, we had, at the staff level, they'd identified, geez, as long as we're doing an amendment, there are some other possible uses on the municipal side of the TIF. So we kind of brainstormed and said, well, here are some possibilities, and we put them in. And I understood it was maybe a little rushed at that point to present that to the council. And so at that point, we had kind of started down the road of identifying a few additional projects that were available to you to use your TIF funds for. We kind of pulled back from that. So I think at this point, if I understand correctly, it's more to explore kind of you've got to, what you can use TIF funds for. So with that being said, and that's the goal, I guess, of the workshop.
And we're not under any deadline which was required by the March timeframe for what we intended to do for the developer.
So that's correct. So the deadline that we were racing against would have applied to everyone, right? So it would have applied on the Dingley side and the town side. But by getting the amendment in place at the time we did and extending the underlying TIF program, you now have time, within the remaining term to make any additional amendments you want to make to the TIF program.
Thank you.
That hurdle has been overcome, and now you have the remaining life of the TIF to decide if and when you want to make any further amendments. So let me pause there. The history of the TIF, it's a little bit complicated with how the Dingley TIF has kind of gotten out the gate. There's an initial TIF, then a First Amendment, Second Amendment, and this last go around was the Third Amendment. When the First Amendment was put in place, it was a 50% TIF captured and reimbursed to the company through a development program, and 50% not captured, 50% just going into the town's general fund. The First Amendment did a few things in terms of what Dingley was doing on its project, but also began to capture 100% available to you under the TIF. Okay, so instead of only capturing 50%, you were eligible to then capture 100% of the TIF projects. But there was a little bit of a glitch at that point because although you were approved to capture 100%, the projects that you could spend the money on was not approved. That was held conditionally pending kind of further review by the state. For one reason or another, I guess that it kind of languished a little bit. In I believe 2011, an additional amendment was gone into then straighten out and get your list of projects approved. So that is the current list. Within your program, you have a list of approved projects that you're now able to spend your TIF money on. At the same time that was happening, although you were allowed to retain 100% of the incremental value, again, you have some flexibility. So I guess I want to step back and say that the TIF program allows you to do certain things, and then whether you do them is kind of you have some discretion about doing them or not doing them. So the TIF, as it then had been modified, allowed you to shelter the 100%. But again, because of, I think, a combination of the delay in getting your project list approved and just kind of one thing leading to another, the town did not continue to capture 100%. So there was a portion that was eligible to be captured, but was not captured, and that was just put into your general fund. Where we are today is, where the TIF, how the TIF is operating today is you may recall some conversations about the original assessed value, how the TIF gets measured. So the TIF is measured off of a starting value, the original assessed value. When the TIF was first put in place, that was roughly $6 million. When the TIF was later amended and a second Dingley project was brought forward, that new project was going to be measured off of a higher value, $13 million, okay? So you had two measuring points. The TIF has been operating since the 13 million second operating point has been put in place. That is where you've been capturing. You've been capturing everything over 13 million. Well, it's been eligible to be captured. You have not been capturing the value between the original 6 million and the 13 million. That is available to you to be captured. Okay, so that is tax increment revenue that, should you want to, could be captured in your TIF. So that $6 million of kind of, I don't want to say lost value, but value that's in the TIF that you have not been taking a TIF advantage of, you've been taking general fund advantage of. That money has been, that taxes on that value have been going into your general fund. That money is now available to the tune of roughly, let's see, $163,000 or so a year is available to you to put into your TIF fund. Okay, so you have available to you that piece, 100% of that piece, and 50% of everything over the $13 million. So I only kind of say that, so that is the pool of TIF revenue that's potentially available to you. That's one part of your equation. The other part of your equation is, okay, how much do we want, and what can we spend it on, and what do we want to spend it on? So that becomes really kind of the laboring oar for you is, okay, what can we do? And you have, as I said, you have a list of projects already in your TIF that you can spend money on. You could amend your program to add additional projects to spend money on, or you could, so you have some, or you can send money back to the general fund, or you can kind of split the difference. So,
can we focus on that first part? Let's go.
Sure.
The difference between the 6 and the 13.
Yep.
What time frame did you say went from 6 to 13? When did it make the jump?
So it went from 6 to 13 6 million was set up around 1993 or 4,
yep.
Whatever the first year of the TIF was, and the 13 million was the 1997 value. It probably was effective for 1998's
Okay.
year.
The 97 time frame is pretty close to when things started tanking with the economy.
Okay.
My question, I guess, would have is, what I've understood according from this is, it may be of less than an error, it may have been a conscious decision by this board there prior to take the general fund part of it,
Yep.
knowing fully well that revenues pressured to be able to fund budgets
Sure.
were tough during that period of time.
Yeah, and I don't mean to say, I mean, I
No,
don't really
I was
know
just-
history. I agree with you.
I just didn't know if that might have been the conscious decision.
Yeah.
So if that's the case,
Yeah.
I think I buy into why it's at the 13 million now, because the pressure for revenues from any basis
Yeah.
is only getting incrementally harder, is
Yeah.
my point I'm making, I guess.
I agree with that, and even in other TIFs we do throughout the state. So the elected officials can every year, on the share that's being retained by the town, can decide, well, we're eligible to retain, let's just say, $200,000, but this year we actually really only want to retain $100,000, so we're going to put $100,000 into our general fund.
Right.
And so that decision can be made. Sometimes it can be made incidentally, and sometimes it's made explicitly, like, yeah, this is what we want to do. So there could be, I don't really know the history as to kind of how the TIF was.
Okay. And I just want to make sure I was on target with what I was saying there,
Yeah.
because getting the understanding of that
Yeah.
pressure coming and knowing, it seems to me that there would be a conscious decision at that point
Sure.
in time with what they were experiencing.
So today, you may make that same decision. So today,
Okay.
the TIF is able to capture incremental value everything above that $6 million level.
Or keep it at the 13 if we chose.
Or you could capture nothing of between the 6 and the 13. It's just
Right.
that, yeah, that's your decision to make. Or some of it. It's like, my kind of effort really is here to say, here's what is available.
Right. No, I get that.
And
And
you
I appreciate you
say,
walking us through the
We'd like
discussion.
to have half of it. Or you don't even have to make your decision today, or even as we do this amendment, can be adjusted annually, right? So the most flexibility for you is when the TIF is set up to capture the full 100%. Then every year you can elect, do we really want to keep the 100% this year or not? If you go the other direction, if you don't collect it now, well, to collect it in the future, you'd have to go back and amend the TIF again. That's an actual process to pull things in. To let things go is just something you can decide in your normal course of business as the elected official. So this year we don't want it or do want it. So.
And again, I think it's just important, especially since it's being recorded, the idea of us collecting and not collecting it doesn't mean the idea that we've actually not collected money, because the pool of money has been the same.
That's true.
It's the idea of what pool of money we put it into, whether it's actually money that comes back and goes into our general fund to offset taxes,
Yes.
or it gets put into another sheltered pool that can be used for other items that actually shelters us. And we talk about sheltered, and again, I don't mean to actually kind of go back on this, but it's just the idea of the shelter means that it's tax deferred. Most people think about that today. The idea when they take out money for their health savings account is tax deferred.
Right.
Same idea. It's sheltered from the idea of paying county taxes on that assessment. So it's not that we've at no point have we not collected our proper taxes from Dingley Press.
Anyone gets the wrong impression? No, it would have
Yeah.
gone to the general fund.
Exactly.
rather than
It's
to
just the
your
idea is that money is where it goes into. Because some people, I've heard people say, well, how come you haven't been collecting all that you could? And it's not that we haven't been collecting all we could. It's just where that money goes is the
I
question.
didn't mean to misspeak or
No,
leave you
and
with misimpression.
and I knew what you're talking about. Just sometimes when people hear the idea of you have a choice of how much you collect, it makes it sound a little different. That's all.
Absolutely. On the tax sheltering, the only slight refinement I'd make is it's not so much tax deferred, it's tax avoided.
Avoided, yeah.
Okay, so you get a certain benefit for the years in which some or all of the incremental value is sheltered. There's a benefit to you for the kind of the flow-through years in which those values are taken into account for the county taxes. When it comes back into your general fund rolls, tax rolls, then you lose that sheltering effect.
And I guess one of the questions I have, if you're talking about the county taxes, if we choose now to actually go more, you had made the comment that yearly we can determine whether we shelter 100% of it or actually do a portion of it in general fund. So as we actually paid our county tax last year, with the amendment that we did this year, in a sense, if we're sheltering more, would that actually mean our county taxes would actually go down? Because we actually have a lower evaluation?
So so think of this as an avoided cost.
Okay.
So when you have investment come into the town, on April 1, it gets pulled up into your tax rolls. And then come August, the assessor will prepare a form and send it to the state and say, here is our town's valuation. Okay, so now it's worth $750 million. So then the state tax assessor equalizes it with all the other, towns and cities in the state, and come up with a number. So maybe it's 783 million, some slight refinement. And that number, for county tax purposes, the county just takes that as a percentage of the total county valuation and says, you owe 2.3% of our county tax. So if $5 million of investment that would have been reported to the state, would have been included in that state valuation, had been TIF'd, 100%, let's just say. When the assessor is reporting that value to the state, what the form that's used says, we're 750 million, but 5 million is in a TIF, so for state equalization purposes, treat us at 745 million. So you avoid, think about it as when new investment comes in, county taxes have a potential to increase. By TIFing it, you avoid that increase. Okay, so if you have TIF potentially eligible value on your tax rolls now, which you do,
Which we do, yeah.
and you next year were to TIF that, when the assessor goes to report now to the state and say, here's our value, that $6 million, let's say the difference between the 6 and the 13, $7 million, would now be included in the sheltered portion, and your value would be relatively lower, when they do the equalization. So your percentage, as a percentage of the county tax, maybe instead of 1.8% would be 1.6%, and you would pay that
A little bit.
portion less in county taxes, right?
I mean, being that Dingley is one of the larger TIFs we had, I mean, not the only one, but one of the larger ones that we've had over the years, I know there's a time frame where, say, the TIF would have ended this year. Say we didn't extend the TIF and it ended. We would have actually had kind of a shock to our county tax in a sense, because the evaluation would have been uploaded all at once. Right. I mean, is there, and again, we're just kind of picking on your professional, your advice here, because that's kind of who you are. Right. Is it wise for us to go the full year at 100% and then all of a sudden have that possible tax shift, or are we better off actually weaning off over a period of time, so in that 5th year we don't actually have a I wouldn't call it a tax shift, but actually a quick upload on our taxes where our county tax goes up.
Gotcha.
$300,000 that year.
Yep.
Yeah.
No, that's I was looking at it, actually. I didn't have a sense of that. So I can't remember the tax shift benefit is roughly, let's just say, for rule of thumb purposes, somewhere between 40 and 50% of the taxes you're keeping. So if you're, for every $100,000 of tax increment that's to your benefit, there's roughly $40,000 to $50,000 of tax shift benefit. Okay, that's a combination of your county tax, municipal revenue sharing, the schools, right? So it's true that it just simply, at the time, that was trying to get the approximation of it. Yeah, so it's going up and down. So, right, so this was roughly, of those three elements, somewhere in the, let's say, $100,000 range. Now, you would not be able to, so when it all comes off, right, that $100,000 would become, you would lose that avoided tax, right? That would become either a combination of new taxes or reduction in state aid to education or reduction in municipal revenue sharing. So it comes in over time. There's a little bit of a lag, right? So it comes on the tax rolls in 1 year. It's reported at the end of that calendar year. The state equalizes it over the course of the next 6 months or so. It gets pulled into the state equalized valuations a year later. Right. So there is a lag. So
it's a time frame, yeah.
Yep. But when it does take into account, right, it all gets taken into account for that year. So you would, so one way towns will kind of plan for that is they will, so for the portion that's the municipal side, right, so we'll capture 100% of everything we can for a couple of years, but then we're going to capture 75% of it for a year, and then we'll capture 50% of it, and then it goes
Wean yourself off, right?
So you're weaning yourself off. That's exactly right. So, but there's a price to be paid. You lose the benefit sooner, and you're balancing kind of the cash flow effect. In terms of your total budget, so I don't really know if, when 80,000, right? I know every year thousands of dollars. This thousand is you're kind of fighting over everything, but you have to decide whether it's better to lose it sooner so the shock is less.
And I think it'd be wise for the council to plan for something like that too, because we do have departments. We do offset a lot of our department costs on the TIF. So when that went away, we'd be losing that funding too. So over a portion of the years, we got to figure out how we actually roll that into our budget. So again, that's one of those things where I just hate to avoid that sudden,
create the perfect
storm
coming off.
But. So that's kind of the economics of it. And before we move on to maybe kind of what you could do with it, do you want to go into the tax shift side of things a little bit more?
Yeah, I'd like to, maybe if we could tackle this one item, get a consensus from this group, and then go into the funding sources if we could. I think that's probably tackle the one big topic and then use. Please, go ahead.
All right. So on the project side then, so If I don't want to misunderstand you, so you go into the kind of what you could spend the money on.
No, I'd like to get this one the way
Oh,
first.
so
You
I-
talk about the shift. and
Yeah,
you
okay,
think
so the
by
tax
all
shift.
means.
So,
By all
yeah.
means.
So the tax shift is, as I said, roughly speaking, it's somewhere in the neighborhood of 40 to 50% of kind of every dollar you take in. So the way to think about it is, take a new dollar of taxes in. If that dollar is coming from sheltered value, right, you're going to have, if you don't shelter it, you just get a new tax dollar. Your county tax will go up by 5 cents. Your education sharing will go down by 25 cents, and your municipal revenue sharing will go down by 12.5 cents. So you get a new dollar in, and you lose somewhere between 40 cents to 50 cents on the dollar. So you net 50 to 60 cents of actual money that's available to you to spend. When you shelter it, you avoid that cost. So the price so there's a benefit to that. You get a dollar in, and all that dollar is available to you. The price, the indirect price you pay, is that you can't spend it on kind of general fund purposes. You have to spend it on kind of TIF qualified purposes. And so then the question of doing that becomes, is it worth it, right, to spend it on these TIF eligible costs as opposed to our general fund? One way to think about that is if you have kind of capital costs coming down in the next 3, 4, 5 years, and they're going to be costs that you really expect. There's a really substantial likelihood you're going to spend that to do whatever those projects are. And it's going to come out of the general fund, or it's going to come out of a bond, or it's going to come somewhere, or it could come out of your TIF fund. So if that expense is going to be incurred, to me, I guess it's kind of a no-brainer that you would take the same dollar and spend it on the same project you're going to spend it on, but spend it as a sheltered dollar rather than
Just taking a loan to yourself instead of financing it through another source.
Right. And so some of these items, some items are pretty clearly, you're going to have these expenses anyway. So just some of the indirect, the non-capital costs, and these are already in your list of approved costs. So there are economic development costs that the town pays. There are kind of salaries and stuff you pay. You're either going to pay, if you pay that, out of your general fund budget, or you pay it out of your TIF budget. So that's an expense. That dollar is going to go out the door one way or the other. It just makes all kinds of sense in the world to spend it out of your TIF money because that dollar is more valuable to you. We are going to get into maybe a list of other things, but the other kind of types of things that might be eligible are kind of road and street improvements. Okay,
Right.
So if there are road and street improvements that really the town is more or less going to be committed to, or there's a substantial likelihood, right, that you're going to incur these costs. Well, same thing. The dollar coming out of the TIF fund is going to be worth 60% more to you or 50% more to you than the dollar coming out of the general fund. So that's kind of the way to think about as you run through the sheltering, what the sheltering benefit to you could be, how much to capture, kind of what you can do with the money. It's not so much to kind of find a list that's the most expansive thing you could spend on. Geez, would we ever do this? Well, it's a potentially good cost. Let's put it on there. Maybe we'll spend money on it. If you have stuff and it's eligible, I mean, that's really kind of the most beneficial, the most economic, makes the most sense of how you use the TIF.
Well, and go to kind of add to that, you also have the opportunity too that you got a wide range of different programs, but because you have it in your development plan, you may not know at that point that you want to spend those funds on, but down the road it could be something that could come up. Then that will already be earmarked for that, and you would have that kind of like banked.
My next question, I guess, would be the income stream that we're seeing on page 16, Diane. Is this based on 6 million sheltered or 13?
It's on the,
Is this the schedule of the TIF that was actually
yeah.
adopted?
I'm verse Third Amendment.
Yes. So the TIF,
in the
TIF
yellow
schedule we
column.
ended up putting in there was on the 13th.
It's on the 13.
Yes.
So this is the safest approach
That
with
is what is in
what's
place right now.
right now,
Yeah.
which wouldn't.
I don't think we all have them packets. This one
It's
here.
in that one came out of this one, I think, Chris.
Yeah, come out of the tonight.
It's in your council agenda.
It must be.
Starts on page 63.
Sorry.
That's part of the 77.
That's okay?
So column M,
Page
I thought-
77.
Yeah.
Page
17, I think we're all like,
I'm gonna
There you
page,
go, right there.
Okay, gotcha.
Page,
column M
Pardon.
based on
16 to
the
me.
6 million?
Page 77 and page 16.
Yeah.
On the other side.
I apologize for the left turn, folks.
77,
Because we weren't doing
our
the,
packet, page 16.
On the, right, the original one that
I didn't
was
see that.
adopted, the project list on that, what we have now, what we're looking at, wasn't included in on that.
Agreed,
so
agreed. And the fact is, earmarking the funds and everything else, we adopted what was already in play,
That's
which
correct.
was putting it in different place. Point I'm making here, I guess, is this assumes the $13 million, so we're not talking about resetting back to the $6 million. To Councilor LaRochelle's point, and kind of where I'm leaning, is the fact that
make sure I look at, I just want to see what we're, I want to make sure I'm looking at the right one.
It's basically just a,
is that the one?
Okay, no, this does show, okay, so this, just here.
Because it's double the amount we normally get, so doesn't it go back to the,
Look at it, make sure I understand.
if you look at the last 5 years, it's 340, 80.
Yeah, so
Compared to
this is off the 6 million.
Off to $6
Yeah.
million. Okay.
It's right down at the bottom there.
Yes.
That's what I thought that was where
Yeah,
we
I'm
were
looking,
living,
I'm
but I
looking at it
wanted to
right
make
now, the
sure.
6443 number, yeah.
The,
Oh,
the,
we
re-
were.
the reason I ask is to Council LaRochelle's point.
the general fund.
Oh, I see.
Then we started.
If we had $1.7 million with the infrastructure in the next 5 years, I would buy into that with the projects list.
Right.
If we don't say that we're going to have those kind of projects, I look at it as a short-term cash grab that we're going to eventually have to pay back in the long haul when that valuation catches up with us in the year 6, 7
Yeah, it's,
associated with that. Then I think it's going to be the perfect storm in that we're going to get less state funding for education, we're going to pay more for county tax, and we're going to have to fund
right.
the, in current place, what the economic development money this is earmarked for at present,
Right.
all in that same 2-year period. And I think that is the risk. I'm not sure it's worth it for 60 cents on the dollar, is my point. And that's my opinion. I'd like to hear from staff, and I'd like to hear from you guys. What you're living on that first topic, and then get into what we earmarked the funds for, which is an easier concept to put our heads around.
What I heard earlier is, I guess, gives us an opportunity for that, because I guess you were stating earlier that as we go every year, we can decide basically if this is actually sheltered at this level or not, right?
That's
Right.
So that's without an amendment, that's actually, do we
Yeah.
have to re-amend it or not?
You would decide, you would vote this year, and let's just say these numbers held, and you had available to you 340,000 potential tax increment, and you said, you know what, we're only going to keep 50% of that.
Yeah.
So 170,000 would go to your general fund, and then when the report is made to the state, the valuation that's shown as sheltered is adjusted accordingly.
Now, you just said potential, so this 340 number per year isn't actually, that's not a steadfast number that actually would be known at this point in time?
Well, it depends on your mill rate. It
Okay,
depends on the
that's a
actual
mill rate.
valuation.
Yeah, that
of
would
the,
fluctuate some, but not.
Yeah, I mean, it's
The TIF wouldn't actually fluctuate, it would be our end that would actually fluctuate as far as for the,
it's just that everything kind of shifts. But I mean, it's based
Moving
on
target.
history. It's probably a reasonable number because it's based on value that's there now, and it's more the mill rate changing.
I think that's a good point. The most conservative is to be able to go with the 6 versus the 13 and amend year to year.
I mean, yeah, exactly.
My concern there, knowing everything we've been instructed always, is the fact is we can't bind the hands of a council that walks behind us. In that regard, is the fact is, are they going to be under the same pressure that we are any given year for a budgetary that they're just going to take the cash and deal with it in year 6,
Well,
and you still get to the same place?
that's the risk that we run right there, and it's very easy for a different council to take a different perspective on this, and all of a sudden, year 3, they decide to go for broke and take it all, and then you come to year 6, and it's an absolute bloodbath.
I mean, and it's not. It
Would
will
think
be
not.
it will be a 6-figure jump on expenditure or income reduction for sure when that is finally realized. And that's the only point that I would actually make, is the fact is right now, we have a fair balance that's coming in at that 13 million, that 6 million's already in it. We're already paying the worst case scenario. So to continue with the general fund, it actually is cash money right now going towards the general fund side rather than the TIF piece is
Right.
what.
We also need to remember in year 6, when it runs out, you're going to be getting the part that's now being paid back to Dingley will stop being paid back to Dingley and will go into the general fund. So that's another 300,000 that would be in your general fund every year. I think that would make up for that bloodbath right there.
Oh, I realize that clearly, but I
That's a
also,
good point.
I also
Thank you.
understand that the valuation of our, will go up, so it's gonna be a wash.
Right, I mean, you're getting 50% more money, basically.
But this isn't actually
That's a very good
50/50
point.
because actually theirs is, their share they're getting back is 177 a year,
Right.
and ours is 340. So that's not actually a 50/50 split.
So that's where the 6 million and the 13 million really come into
Yeah.
play.
Right.
So the 50/50 split is the 13 million and above.
Hmm.
And between the 6 and 13, that was just available to the town.
Yeah.
Yep.
So it won't truly be that 340 then.
No, but it's still a pretty substantial amount.
Is there a formula that shows specific impact to education funding for each of the options?
So the way the education subsidy works now, there's a anticipated local share, right? So there's a mill rate that the state established and says basically 8.3 mils or something. We expect you to contribute this to your local school costs. So they just run that 8.3 million or whatever. That mill rate changes every year when the state does its budget and comes up with kind of how much they're going to support education. So that whole process, at the end of that, they come up with a mill rate expectation.
Okay, thank
And
you.
that mill rate expectation, then they go to every town and say, okay, town, our mill rate expectation for every town is this year 8.31 mils. So you can just run your tax levy times 8.31 mils. That's what they expect you to pay, right? And if you look at the worksheet, they say, okay, there's a formula that comes up with the Lisbon school should cost $70 million to run. Our mill rate expectation is 8.3 mils. You should be paying $42 million. Okay, our share is the rest. Okay, now that gets to the 70 million, right? So if you want to pay 80 million for your schools, right, you pay your mill rate expectation plus you pay whatever additional amounts you want to pay. So when you, so if you wanted to say, okay, if I sheltered something, right, that $1 million of value you're sheltering, you're saving, right? They don't expect you to pay 8.3 mils on that million, right? Because that's not in how they look at your valuation. So you're saving 80, whatever 8.3 mils times a million is. It's $80,000 or something, I guess. I don't know if that answers your question.
It
But
does. I
that's-
appreciate it. Thank you.
Anybody else? Where's everybody? I'm looking for a temperature of where everybody wants to land on this.
Eddie, too, personal property.
Yeah, that's true.
Anybody got any take on it?
I guess the question I have is, I mean, some of this is in our control now. I mean, the TIF has been amended. I mean, that part of it is not been extended. I mean, that part of it is there. So the question, I mean, is it easier for me to look at, say, this year 25, and we actually, the way it was, we actually collected or sheltered $163,000 by this chart. I
Yep.
would say, right? That's actually a number that we know that was this last year.
That's right. Yep,
And
that's
then,
correct.
You know, so at this point, going to Alan's point, we could choose just to leave it that way and just actually keep going. That number will change a little bit every year, but it won't change drastically.
That's correct.
And so we'd actually, the difference between that 163 and the 340 would be continue going into a general fund.
That's correct.
And if things would just keep as they are, and we would actually figure out where that 163 actually went. We still could pick all these programs that we're looking at and saying these are all eligible.
Right.
That's correct.
But the share in each one of them would be actually reduced because instead of,
Almost
you know,
half.
you'd actually be almost in a half. The benefit, and I guess that's what I was going after, you know, so, okay, so we choose to go the route we are, and now we're collecting 340, and we actually are sheltering more money, you know, what do we actually see in this year, or how long would it be before we actually seen the benefits in our county tax, in our
so the lag
in our
is-
school?
Yep.
Would that be that 2-year lag also?
Yep,
2
yep.
years.
There's a
So-
2-year lag to enjoy the benefits, and then there's a 2-year lag, you know,
Yep.
to suffer the pain at the end. You get the window, you get that 5 years.
Yeah.
But sheltering it now, for
Yeah.
like for this April 1, this
Yep.
past April 1,
Yep.
so it gets reported this fall.
Yep.
You know, the state kind of works it in to 2 January, into this formula 2 Januaries from then. That's when, and then it gets for the state's fiscal year. You see the lag, the way it's built in there. So when it comes out, same thing, reporting a higher value, but it gets reported in the fall, takes a year and a half to get into the state valuation, and then so you don't enjoy it for 2 years, and then you enjoy it for 2 extra years at the
So
end.
it's nothing instantaneous, as we know. Everything takes, the wheels of
Yeah,
progress turn slow, and
Right.
I mean,
So I just wanted, one thing I just want to say, as the TIF stands now,
Yeah.
without any amendment, you could still, you are able to shelter this 340,000 or not.
Right.
Yeah.
You can keep going the way you have been,
Yeah.
and you could spend the money on your current list of TIF projects, right? That's what you have in place. You just have not been sheltering the 340, right? You've just been
Right.
Yeah.
letting that go, which you could just keep doing. Every year you could revisit this. Do we want to do it? Do we want to get more, less, same? So you wouldn't have to do anything on the TIF. The only reason why you would amend the TIF is if you wanted to add
Programs.
to the list of what you could spend the money on.
So right now, I mean, to me, what I see is, right now, we actually have 2 main categories that actually we can spend the money on. It's actually for the Economic Development Office, for the payroll and the Operations Economic Office, and we actually have 5,000 a year to go to Moxie. I mean, those are the 2 highlighted items. And with those being the only items we have, so if we want to keep continuing our downtown improvements in the village, if we wanted to upgrade a crosswalk, we can't do it with that money
That's
because
correct.
it's not listed in the program.
That is correct.
So, and even now, I mean, I had talked to Diane, there is roughly 80 some odd thousand, and after this year, there'll be over $100,000 of money sitting in that account now that we can't do anything with because we actually haven't used it for the ED, and we actually haven't used it for Moxie, so it's money sitting there that we can't even though we needed it to actually improve
Can't use
a
it.
road, we can't use it. So basically, what we're talking about tonight is, do we want to make a broader list of things that we can use that money on? And to me, I think we're crazy not to. We have options. Whether or not we actually go with the higher number or lower number is something that we have,
Yeah.
that's actually already in place. We can do that. It's more the idea, do we extend the program? And I think that's important to see because it does, with things coming up, I mean, there's a lot of important programs. To me, it comes down to the idea, can we do stuff in district or not district, or,
Right.
Our match to, state
Match to
programs.
grants.
Exactly. There's
Yeah,
a lot of
and
things
that's
there.
another one as well, because I actually asked that Jim that question. Here we are coming up, well, we've got to find funds to match up with the Main Street program. And we would be able to use the TIF dollars to help with that match. So those are important things, to kind of keep in mind as well. We know we've got to have the roads done, and with the amendment of the TIF and the acceptance of it, is we were able to include the wear and tear on the roads that the trailers and the workers travel to through Lisbon, and what that does to the community or to the town that we have to go in and do the repair on that. So that would be an eligible project. And you got to think of the Betty with the personal property. There will be over $200,000 coming back to the town with that program as well on the new equipment at Dingley.
So revision for estimated budget, is that page 74, 75 in the council packet?
Yes.
Oh, yeah.
So we know what the current is. Anything for the 800,000 in the past that we would have had over that 5 years would have gone to either the economic development and $5,000 for Moxie. You're seeing 250 grand for street rehab.
This is a good cost, too.
250 grand for public safety improvements, and there's a list. Physical improvements, safety improvements outside the district. Why don't we speak to some of those? Maybe Tracy, did you the one that put these together, you and Diane, or who? Where did these come from?
Actually, Jim and I put them together, and with Diane's help as well.
Okay, so why don't you just go through that list real quick to highlight for us if we could.
Is that this list right? Where we
Yeah,
added?
that's one we added in.
Okay. So, so let me step back a little bit and give you a little bit of a primer on the kind of the categories of costs that you can spend the money on. So the TIF statute basically breaks it down, and maybe you understand this a little bit already just from your familiarity with TIFs and working with Tracy and Diane, but there are three buckets of costs. There are costs that are within the TIF district. There are costs that are outside of the TIF district but related to some activity that's happening in the TIF district. And then there are some other kind of free-for-all outside the TIF district, could be anywhere in the town. They don't have to be really related to what's happening in the TIF district. So the costs we've identified, the additional costs here and the kind of potential new projects are all in the tier 2. So they're outside of your TIF district, but they're related in some way to what's happening because of the TIF district, okay? And so the cost of the street and road improvements, public safety improvements, the two categories of that. So there needs to be a linkage, right, to what's happening, the activity in the Dingley TIF district to the improvements we want to make, but we can make that linkage. And so, for instance, the road improvements, so the connector, the feeder roads, commuter roads, because of both employee traffic and deliveries, delivery trucks, things like that, wear and tear on the roads. So I can't think of a reason why that wouldn't be considered a good cost for you. The public safety improvements, they're related to that. So crosswalks or traffic calming measures or kind of other things that kind of regulate just public safety in terms of the additional traffic you have. That's almost the same basic rationale for it.
How far can we stretch that relationship in that regard? Because I know one of the points I would make, and I know we've said it, this group here, is that specifically anything we were going to try to accomplish would be on the Lisbon side of town. Is that where the line's being drawn, Tracy, in your opinion?
Yes, when in some of these projects, I was even looking at adding a new sidewalk and basically starting right at the village center and going all the way to Dingley, so that helped with employees as far as safety-wise and everything. So that wasn't all included within the Lisbon area.
Okay.
But for the capital improvement part of it, if we're actually looking at actually offsetting a potential piece of fire apparatus, that would actually not be, because that could be part of the capital part of this too, right, as far as going towards equipment.
Absolutely.
Right.
But I was going strictly with
As
the
far
ones
as for improvements, as far as for infrastructure, roads
Right.
and stuff.
Right, a prorated share of the
Yep.
fire equipment. It's got to be associated with Dingley. The street and road rehabilitation is the Route 196 corridor and up 125, so you could use a prorated share on our costs of the DOT project.
Yep.
This is coming up, those 3 road projects. That's why we did a map.
Yes, we
We
did.
included all of that, and it's outside the district, but it's related to the workers traveling on those roads.
And that was part of the TIF that went to the state for approval.
Okay.
No, we
Oh,
pulled it
sorry,
out.
we pulled it out. Oh, sorry. We would have to put it back in.
I
That would
guess
be with the amendment.
a question on that is this is actually budgeted out, and I understand the idea of the 50 a year, 50 a year, 75 a year. Does that actually have to stay on course, or say it?
No.
So the money that actually is in that pool of money, it could be allocated to more to one of these items versus the rest of them if the need is there one year.
Right.
We're not bound by the schedule.
That is correct.
Yeah, that's
Yeah. Basically, the idea of it is like you have a wish list and you put everything down like the little kid that you want for Christmas, and you might get this or item or you might get that item. So, yeah, depending on where the needs are and where you want to focus it. The biggest thing going through the amendment is that you don't want to continue to have to go through amendments all the time. There's a delay, luckily, through the process of the Dingley one in passing it, we were able to get through that. But I can tell you now, there's probably already a pile of 50 or so TIFs up there waiting to go through approval. So you want to be able to have that wish list. You want to be able to put everything in there. It doesn't necessarily mean that you're going to spend those funds on that, but you have it approved, and that's basically what you want. So you're not having to go back and say, oh, I wish we included this. Include everything that is eligible to include, but it's not in stone that, yes, you got to spend it on that. Something within there else that could come up that's where the funds need to go to, and that's what you decide to do with it.
Tracy, on these first 3 items that beyond the ones that for the the last 2 that were already written, how closely are those to what to the Kelly Park TIF? Are those fairly similar, right? Those are pretty broad written, similar to that, or?
I'm sorry, which one on the,
The first three, the new ones.
Oh, okay.
The infrastructure.
The infrastructure ones, are those fairly similar to what was written into the Kelly Park TIF also?
yes, when it dealt with, because we didn't have this in hand as far as, so when I redid the Cali TIF, I included a lot of the same things. Yes, I did.
right,
Yes,
yeah.
I did.
The broad overview is fairly similar.
Now, Councillor Larshall mentioned the 100 grand that's there. Where does that fall into this, under the new scenario?
Yeah, you could spend that
Do we have the
held
ability to
money.
put it into a line item to get that, rather than having it sit in economic development when it's eventually a future use?
Yeah, you would, yes, you could spend it on these other, your project list, you can then spend that money on.
Okay.
Once it's approved, once the state approves it, you are able to spend it, but they have
Okay.
to approve it first. Once we get the letter back from the state saying the programs have all been approved, then they're eligible to be, the money's eligible to be spent on that without any type of penalties.
And the specific point, the money you already have from.
Yeah.
the prior
Correct,
year.
exactly.
Just be able
Yes.
to be used in any of these categories versus the idea of the specific one that was there before. Myself, I mean, I think the way it's written up, it gives us a lot more flexibility moving forward. The question I think the council will just have to do over a period of time is how they spend their money wisely, that's all. And how will they actually plan for that, the end of the program, you know?
So you're of the mindset, accept the 6 million because it's conservative with this plan and incorporate the additional 100 grand somewhere?
I think so. I mean, right now, and especially with the idea of the way it's written, that if for some reason, you know, there is a hole needed for doing a project that we need to do, that has to happen, I mean, we can actually, we can tap into that and actually use it for money that's already being spent, with the idea of it's, you know, getting, instead of getting 60 cents on the dollar, we're getting 100.
And just
of it,
to
you know?
clarify that one point, once it's held prior year,
Yeah.
you couldn't really change course. It's kind of,
Yeah.
you're doing it on an as you go basis.
I see what you're saying.
This year,
Once we pull the trigger to go up, we can't go back down the following year. We're in that, is that what you're saying?
you can go down the next year, but you can't go down for the money you already held.
Right.
Yeah, exactly. Yep, I got you. Yep.
Yeah, yeah.
Oh, that's fine. Thank you.
Any other things that we've actually missed in dialogue?
To me, if you're going to have a TIF, which it's there, you
Yeah.
might as well benefit as much as you can by the shelter fund. You know, I think just going forward, it's always an interesting thing as you learn. The downfall is with most people on council, by the time they actually figure it out, you know, they're ready to get off the council, and the next person has to learn all over again.
Right,
And-
right,
and-
right, right,
And if you
right.
step
It's
away from
true.
it for 5 minutes, you forget what
is
it's all
true.
about, you mean? So, I mean, it's just one of those things where it's an ongoing education for everybody, you know, and the state changes its rules, and it's a moving target all the time. But if we can shelter money and we can actually use it, I mean, there's no question about it. We have the need for the money. The question is, you know, the money we're diverting out of our general fund, as long as we're actually, you know, this situation's awesome because with Dingley Press, with the new, we're actually getting that $200,000 back in extra personal property tax in a sense.
That's correct.
So, and it's not
Now
a,
offset it a
it's
little.
not like we're losing all this money going to our general fund. It's being offset. But with that being said, this isn't going to last forever, you know, so it is going to fade away. So eventually you got to learn to live without it, you know what I mean?
So are you looking at going back to the 6 million is the starting point so that you can
Capture.
shelter as much?
I would,
It's
I
a,
would
it's a
recommend.
it's a workshop, but
Yeah.
give me a sign, not,
Yeah, I'm there.
I just think with the,
Chris?
Yes.
Yeah? I heard you here. I thought, right?
Yes.
I know you were okay with it. You got consensus that you got the group to be able to go with the 6.
And we have that on the agenda for,
Yeah, I know, I just,
get his
before we
straw
move
poll.
forward, now,
Exactly.
you raised a good point, I think. We got legal advice sitting right here.
Yes, you do.
Is it prudent for a community to actually have a TIF policy moving forward for the next company coming in to be able to say what would actually qualify and trying to set that rather than having to recreate all this in a vacuum?
And I was going back to the idea of when Scott Benson was here, that we spent quite a bit of time coming up with a performance TIF type of layout, meaning that if a company came in, you know, their TIF was based on the performance, you know, the size of the building, the number of jobs, the pay scale of the jobs, how it actually impacted the community based on the idea of, it would just be nice moving forward that there was actually for the office and for the council when actually new TIF comes forward that actually would meet a guideline. So it's not, if the council would say, sorry, we don't like this, it doesn't look like we're just bad people saying that we don't like it. It's more either it meets a requirement or not. And do you see communities going to that? I mean, it's one of those things where, I mean, TIFs are one of those things where they're one of those things you love to hate because, you know, you love businesses coming in, but, you know, we actually see quite a bit of growth in our community that's not adding anything to our tax, you know, offset for our citizens, you know what I mean, with, you know, our downtown TIFs and some of the bigger projects going on. People get excited that they're seeing these projects, but they don't really see the benefit on their tax.
Right.
And how do you balance? How do you qualify that for each person coming through fairly is one of those things where it's, to me, is a challenge. But
yeah, I guess I would say that for a town that anticipates kind of regularly considering the TIF issue, the TIF question, it can really give the council a good sense of comfort, you know, having a TIF policy, that at least there's been an official statement as to kind of how you plan to move forward. Now, there's usually a carve-out, like, you know, you could waive the policy, you know, because you may get a project that doesn't really fit in, but, you know, there's a fair amount of thought that would need to go into, I think, an effective and a kind of well-crafted policy. It involves kind of, do you favor, you know, one part of the town over, you know, not favor it like that's our favorite part of the town.
Careful.
yeah, no, yeah, I
Where
totally understand
where is
that.
development likely to go? Where would it go normally? You know, that we wouldn't think that we would need to use TIF. Where would we want to use TIF to encourage development? I don't even know if that, you know, these are some kind of things you think about. How do we want to use a policy to kind of promote how TIF might help development in the town? Probably the biggest thing that towns have to wrestle with is, okay, what's the TIF reimbursement agreement going to be
Correct,
like?
yeah.
Do we have as
Yes,
a policy matter, if you make this level of investment, you're eligible to get up to this level of reimbursement. So if it's a smaller project, we don't really have to, it's just kind of written down. We consider 50-50 TIFs if you do a project up to X million dollars. You know, if you go above that, well, that's a pretty substantial investment. Sure, we might be interested in a longer TIF at a higher percentage. You've kind of thought these things through, and when someone comes in, you say, oh, I've got a TIF policy. Here's how, it kind of gives you something behind you.
I think it goes back to your point too, Fern, is that for new council coming in, especially if it's adopted, I've had that conversation with Scott Benson, and I asked him, he says, well, we kind of used something, but I don't think anything ever was formally adopted by council, you know.
Here it was not. No, it was, we went through the exercise, the idea of actually forming the TIF and getting the guidelines approved, but there was really never a policy put in place, and even that one didn't materialize, so we were never really to see how that actually would have worked out in that project.
This sounds like a good time as far as to be able to do. I know, you know, there's certainly a lot of communities that do the TIP policies. I have even researched some of that myself with some of the other communities, and they are good to have in place for other councilors coming in, or, you know, even a new economic development person. I mean, I'm still here, hopefully, but, you know, just so you have that, and sometimes
Formalize is the base of the traction
exactly,
of where we've
exactly.
To me, it makes it easier for you, and it makes it easier for the council.
Oh, absolutely.
It's even like this TIF here. I mean, the extension of the Dingley Trust. I mean, and in good faith, we actually went 25 years with this TIF. I mean, you know, what actually, you know, what guidelines do we have to extend the TIF? I mean, there's no question about it. If you look at the numbers, I mean, I know where we could spend those TIF monies over the next 5 years quite easily in our budget, you mean? But the idea of, you know, where, you know, do you do it because you like them, or because it's the people sitting here that has their opinion this is good, or do you actually do it because there's some set policy in place saying that, you know, they've been good stewards of the town for the last 25 years, they're still investing in our community. That means we actually, with everything in place, they've paid the taxes, you know, all that stuff that, you know, it's a good opportunity for extension. I would just hate to be up here and actually, as a council or any council, start just being it's their opinion. No, you know, we don't really like your type of business, so you're not going to get a TIF. Versus the idea of more of a set policy. That's all.
Well, within the policy, you may make those judgments.
Yeah.
What kind of businesses do you want to encourage? You know, just those are hard decisions.
And one other question, again, I won't keep you because I know we're getting to the end, but we're actually right now looking at our comprehensive plan, and one of the things is the future land use part. And one of the things we look into the community is saying, where would we actually encourage new growth? I mean, do you see communities, the idea of actually, because there is a limited opportunity how you encourage somebody to go someplace, but if you say, hey, look, these are some areas in town we'd love to see growth, and if you were to build in these areas, that you could actually potentially have a greater opportunity for a TIF? I mean, is that something you can do? I mean, you mentioned the idea of how you direct people with TIFs. I mean, is that possible, or is it?
I mean, sure, it's possible, but I don't want to overstate kind of the real impact a TIF can have. So a TIF is in the larger scheme of the investment that's happening, a TIF is just kind of something that really, it makes it a little more affordable, right? Because it kind of helps kind of with the property tax burden that might come with that. But it's, so it can be a benefit, but I don't want to kind of make it sound like it's people will say, oh, that's where I'll go, because, you know what I mean? It's just a small piece of how people evaluate where to make investments.
But it is a piece.
Yeah, it's a piece.
It is a piece, absolutely.
Yep.
Yep.
I'm done.
Anybody else got anything wrapping up? Tracy, you all set?
All set, thank you.
All right, let's, we got 5 before
Take
7
5-minute
o'clock.
recess.
Let's take 5-minute recess and
We turn everything off?
please, thank you.
Okay.
Okay.
Yeah,
But
good.
we still got to do the public hearing and all
Yeah,
that.
yeah.
In the corner, folks.
There you are.
Game on.
We are live. Welcome all. I'd like to open up tonight's meeting of Town Council, May 1st. The Pledge of Allegiance, please.
To the flag of the United States of America, and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
All you, Twyla.
All right, let's start with roll call. Counselor Albert.
Here.
Counselor Kobe. Here. Counselor Brunel.
Here.
Counselor LaRochelle.
Here.
Counselor Ward.
Here.
Counselor Lunt.
Here.
Counselor Crawford.
Here.
The first item on the agenda is the good news and recognition. We just finished up with the workshop. It would be the proclamation presentation to Phil Palmore. Mr. Palmore, would you join me at the microphone over there? Mr. Palmore, we invited you here tonight to let you know that at the meeting on March 20th, 2018, the council adopted the following resolution. Whereas the following person has served the citizens of Lisbon as a member of the Lisbon Fire Department for 33 years. Phil Palmore was appointed as a firefighter to the Lisbon Falls Fire Company on May 1, 1985. And whereas in 1995, he transferred to the E.T. Smith Hose Company, where he attained the rank of lieutenant. And whereas Phil Palmore has retired on January 1, 2018 from the Lisbon Fire Department after serving as a dedicated and valued member of the department. And whereas his contribution of service to the town of Lisbon and its citizens will always be appreciated. Now, therefore, be it resolved by the Town Council of the Town of Lisbon that Phil Palmore shall be presented his helmet, shield, and fire department badges in recognition of his 33 years of service to the town of Lisbon.
We agreed. She'd read it and I would actually present it to you. Right?
Congratulations. Stay right there for a few minutes for pictures.
Team
A
photo.
lot of fine suits right here. Let's come forward, please. We'll let you hold that. Everybody come on up. Yeah, the showcase in the front.
I have a microphone. Somebody was like to share. Did you want a microphone? You could be the front. Good idea, too. Talking.
Go on in. Go on in.
This way? Which way?
I'll tell you what, you can move the podium this way, but I'll take this. There you go. Not triple up.
Thank you, sir. You may.
Hey, Neil, I don't want your head.
I thought the light would help. Oh, that's gold.
Oh, I still get it. Thank you.
I think I'd win.
Phil.
Exhale as everybody lets it all out.
Phil.
Don't sit down yet. Actually, everybody can stay up. One of you two guys can do the speaking. The other one can hand it to him.
Phil, on behalf of the E.T. Smith Hose Company Association and the Lisbon Falls Fire Department Association, we would like to present you with this plaque.
Eric wanted you to know that you can't use that.
I can't.
Yeah, let us take that. Yeah.
Well, words aren't good enough. Thank you so much. It's been a wonderful time ever since '85. We've done a lot of stuff together and a lot of big fires, a rumble mill, a lot of everything together. And I can't think of a better group to be with. And I'm sorry that I got sick and I had to leave, but you guys are there for me as well. And I did get some good news. I'm in remission right now. Thank you very much, everybody.
We're going to miss you, Phil. We're going to have to leave that to Bob.
Here you go, Bob.
Hey, congratulations.
Thank you. Thank you very much, guys.
Thank you for giving us the time.
Thank you. Thank you, guys.
Thank you, guys.
Thank you very much again.
Thanks again. Thank you.
Thank you, guys.
Congratulations.
Thank you.
One's somewhere.
Try to get it done by 8.
Absolutely.
Just need a motion to adjourn, right?
Any other good news or recognition tonight that anybody might have?
How do you top that?
I don't. Moving right along. Next item.
There are no public hearings, so it would be audience participation and response for agenda items.
Anybody wishing to address the council for anything on the agenda, please step forward. Seeing no movement. Next item, Twyla.
Under the consent agenda, Order 2018-94 to approve the municipal accounts payable and payroll warrants, number 117 for $20,184.08. Number 118 for $166,046.17. Number 119 for $17,081.97. Number 120 for $241,671.96. School accounts payable and payroll warrants, number 29 for $737.34. Number 1056 for $346,386.42. Number 1057 for $13,013.55. Number 1820 for $82,961.17. To approve the workshop minutes of April 10, April 17, and the workshop minutes of April 24. Plus, set a public hearing on May 15th for victualist licenses for Fernand Stelzer, doing business as Domino's, Phil Butterfield, doing business as Smoke and Phil's, Belly Bustin' Barbecue, and a special entertainment permit for Frank's. And to, along with the renewal victualler licenses, the attached list, and the renewal itinerant vendor permit for Carvel's, doing business as the Riverside Flea Market.
I need a motion.
I'll make the motion.
I need a second.
I'll second.
All in favor?
Order passed, 7-0.
Next item.
Under Council Orders, Ordinances, and Resolutions, Order 2018-95, amended and restated credit enhancement agreement for Dingley Press.
Tracy Stuber, Economic and Community Development Director. Last month, and then the Dingley Press came before council to have their TIF amended, and as part of that, we also need to do the credit enhancement agreement. That wasn't done at that time, so Dingley is here this evening to come before council to get approval of their credit enhancement agreement, and ask council for to give authorization for the town manager to sign the credit enhancement agreement. Jim Safian is here with Pierce Atwood, along with Neil Poston, Finance Director for Dingley Press. If you have any questions.
Anybody give us just a brief synopsis of changes for the listening public in the corner?
Sure. My name is Jim Safian, Pierce Atwood, here at TIF Council for Dingley Press. There was a credit enhancement agreement that kind of covered the first project and the first term of years. This just captures, really, that agreement was a little bit outdated. So this new agreement kind of captures some of the things we talked about earlier, the $13 million starting point, the remaining term, and the 50-50 split based on that. So really that's all it does. It's been reviewed by both staff and by town's council. Changes have been made. All it does is memorialize really the last 5 years of the additional 5 years of the agreement that were added as part of that last TIF amendment.
Thank you, sir. Any questions?
I make a motion to approve.
I'll second it.
All in favor?
Order passed 7-0.
Thank you. And thank you for your time earlier, too. Appreciate it.
All right.
Thank you.
Thank you for doing business in Lisbon.
Next item, file.
Order 2018-96, the CDBG facade grant bids.
I guess it's my night. Tracy Stuber, Economic and Community Development Director. CDBG grant for the facade. This is for the property of MT Pools. Last year, we went to bid. The bid came in a little higher than what the owners had budgeted for. So they came back with a new scope of work, and we put the bid out. There were four companies that requested the bid packet, and I only received one. And based upon that one, the owners are ready to go into an agreement and begin their work. So unfortunately, I have the wrong one in front of me. So,
Beercrest Brothers.
yes, Beercrest Brothers. Thank you for $39,400. Is that
Right. Correct. Yep.
And so if basically just asking for permission to allow them to move forward with the project, and so they can begin the
That
work.
was my question. You already addressed it. The fact is they're comfortable with working with this contractor, knowing they had 4 people interested and they only got 1 bid.
That's correct.
As
Yeah.
long as they're comfortable, I'm comfortable. I need a motion.
I'll make the motion.
I'll second.
And one good thing about this is a local company.
Correct.
So, yep. All in favor?
Thank you.
Order
you,
passed
Tracy.
7-0.
Next item, 12.
Order 2018-97, the Maine Department of Transportation Mill Street Center Bridge Replacement Project, construction over limit permit and municipal bond.
So this is just a formality that we have to do every time the DOT does a project here in Lisbon. And we've done it on past projects, and this time we just received notice that they're going to be starting the Mill Street Bridge project. So we need to sign an agreement for an overload permit. And it also says that we may require a bond, but we typically don't. But this is just something that we have to sign. The municipal officers have to sign. We've been 2 or 3 other times in front of council for the same type of permit when they've done work.
Yeah, most recently I
Yeah.
remember Route 9 last year.
And then I think we came earlier this year for the work that's going to happen on 196 between between Capitol Avenue and School Street.
I think you're right.
We came.
I make the motion.
Second.
All in favor? Oh, go.
Yeah, just a discussion. Is this actually a state requirement that this actually gets done? I'm just curious. I mean, it's one of those things. I'm not sure if we could actually I mean, 196 and Route 9 and 125 are state roads, so I'm not sure if we could really stop them anyway, so I was just kind of curious.
No, but they like to have the
Yeah,
permit.
I think it's good. I was just curious if it's something, if we said no, if it would actually make a
What would
difference.
that mean?
I know, what would it mean? I'll have to
Yes, I
ask
think it would
Ernie
make a
that
difference,
tomorrow
but-
night. What if we didn't sign that? What would it mean?
Either way, I was just curious, that's all.
Just means Diane would need to write a sternly worded letter, send it to the state, that's all.
All in favor?
Sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt. I was just curious, that's all.
Next item.
Order 2018-98 to set the public hearing for the amended and restated Dingley TIF Development Program.
Tracy Stuber, Economic and Community Development Director. Earlier this evening, we had a workshop in reference to the Dingley TIF, and this is basically for the development program on how the monies can be spent. Again, this will be an amendment to the previous amended TIF, so we'll be looking at going for a fourth amendment and looking at the development program. So I'm asking council if we could set the public hearing date on the fourth amendment for the Dingley on May 15th.
I need a motion.
Make the motion.
Second.
A second.
All in favor?
Order passed 7-0.
Thank you.
Next item.
Under other business, council committee reports.
No news is good news.
Okay. Planning board. They had their meeting last week. I wasn't able to attend. One of the things that I know was on that was the capital improvement plan. I will be presenting that at the next planning board meeting that's scheduled to be able to go through what we heard at the budget workshop. Spoke to the chair. I think it's prudent to actually have them be involved at the budget workshop so we can do it all in one meeting next season, but we'll take care of that as a presentation for them at their next meeting. Water.
They haven't had another meeting. Their next meeting's coming up on the 8th, next Tuesday at 5:30. I went back to my 4:10 meeting, the last time they had a meeting, and I have it in front of me, and really wasn't anything on there. The only thing that's really sticking out to me is about the public hearing for the MDOT. It's going to be on May 2nd at the MTM Center at 6 p.m. I'm not sure if anybody got that or not, but that's something that's really jumping out at me. The next, like I said, the next one's next Tuesday.
Thank you, sir. LDC, I didn't forget you.
No, you didn't forget me. We actually, last meeting, we were going to do a walk through in Littleton Village. It actually was kind of a not great night raining, so we were going to postpone it to a nicer night because it looks like nicer weather's coming, believe it or not. Huh?
Yes.
Isn't that something? So, so we will actually, I believe it will be posted on the website hopefully for our next meeting. So if anybody's interested, we'll try to have it listed on the website.
Conservation, there's no report for tonight. Recreation? County, pick up in the fall. Library.
Now's a good time to sign up for the summer reading program. Get your kids involved.
Thank you, sir. Town council? Town manager. That's us.
Chris already stole
Good
my
job.
thunder. Just a reminder, tomorrow night is that public hearing at 6 p.m. at the MTM Center. All the abutters along the work route have been notified, plus Tracy went down and went to visit all the businesses to let them know what was going on. So I expect a pretty good crowd tomorrow night. And the only other thing I wanted to bring up, next week on May 8th is our last scheduled budget meeting where we do public safety. And I just wanted to know if maybe you wanted to start at 6 o'clock because we have a couple of unfinished things. Number one is IT, and I can get Nick to come here. And number two is the planning board, maybe get them and Amanda to come to answer any questions you had from the last meeting with regards to the consultant. And I thought if we could try to deal with those twos from 6 to 7 and then go into the school budget public hearing, and then do public safety at the end. Will that work for you, to schedule it at 6? If not, maybe we should schedule another budget meeting.
No, that's a waste.
Yeah, I'm down with
But
one
we're
one
already
day.
here.
and,
We're here.
So you want to
Take
do
the
it,
pain.
if we start at 6, I think we can get it done. I just think if we start everything at 7, it's going to make us late.
Can you add to that 6, give an idea of where we're going to land?
Yes, I'm going to.
Going
With
into
what
that?
we've made right now for changes, I'll have a new figure for you. Yes.
Please.
Okay, perfect. That's all I had.
Appointments?
Next item is Order 2018-99 to appoint election clerks. They are 2-year terms.
I read the list. I need a motion.
I'll make the motion.
Second?
Second.
All in favor?
Order passed, 7-0. And the next one is to
No Ricky Roberts, right?
appoint wardens for June 12, 2018 election. Yes, Rick Roberts has agreed to be your warden.
I'll make the motion.
Need a second.
Second.
All in favor?
Thank you. Order passed, 7-0. Next is councilor communications.
Anybody got anything to communicate? Yes, sir.
Last Saturday, Cheryl from Haggerty Realty with Positive Change actually did a downtown cleanup, and I want to thank Cheryl for organizing. We actually had a group of people down there for the morning, and thank town manager for allowing Steve to come down with a dump truck. We actually filled it up pretty quickly. Just did a quick cleanup around the edges, got leaves and cigarette butts and stuff hanging out for the winter, raked some leaves, and it's amazing over a couple hours if you have a lot of busy hands how much you can do. And it'd be nice to see that spread over throughout more of the town, but just want to thank everybody that came out because I think it was a good time and the weather wasn't that great, but I think a lot got done. So.
Anybody else? I would give kudos to Lisbon Junior Athletic League. If anybody hasn't had a chance to go by the LES campus, it's pretty cool to see. In the 7-8 years that we've been working on it, you're seeing 3 new fields that are actually coming to fruition. They played their first game on one of those fields last Saturday. Things are really shaping up. The drainage is perfect. These fields need some work, but if anybody remembers the 2 original fields on the front that are now the older ones, we now have overhead. We have a presence. We've had a lot of really good tournaments, districts and whatnot. I encourage them to check it out. It's pretty cool to see. Next item, Twyler, if nobody else.
Audience participation for new items.
Anybody wishing to address the council for a new item?
Tracy Stuber, Economic and Community Development Director. I just wanted to give you an update on Monday, which was yesterday. I went to the state and delivered the grant for the EMS services, so that has been turned in. And they've given a date as far as on June 15th, so hopefully we'll have information before June 15th. Also, I stopped in the CDBG office to see where they were with the downtown grant. And they probably will be a little bit later in making an announcement because they're waiting for the funding to get to them to know what they're going to have for exact funding before they can make the announcement. So hopefully we'll hear soon.
Thank you much. Anybody else? Seeing none, next item, follow.
Is executive session order 2018-101, 102, 103, and 104 to go into executive session per 1 MRSA, Section 4056A, Personnel Matters, Section 4056C, Acquisition of Real Property or Economic Development, 4056D, Labor Negotiations, and 4056E, Consultations with Legal Counsel.
Will we be having a vote afterwards?
Yes.
Okay. Anybody wishing to stay, you can step out and join us afterwards. We're staying here.
Make the motion.
I'll second that.
All in favor?
Order passed, 7-0. 7-2. Let me turn everything off.
Maybe you won't get this out of Yeah, that's the kiss of death. That right there was the kiss of death. It won't happen.
Oh, we are live. All right, we're back out of executive session. First motion, please.
I make a motion to authorize the town manager, police chief to enter into memorandums of agreement with the bargaining units representing police officers, detectives, and sergeants to establish total hourly wage rates not to exceed $50 for hours worked on special duty assignments funded by sources other than the town of Lisbon.
I need a second on that.
I'll second that.
All in favor? 7-0. Next resolution, please.
Motion to accept Lisbon Emergency Building. The motion is to accept a transfer of the real estate at 385 Lisbon Street from Lisbon Emergency, Inc. to the town of Lisbon in exchange for the town's forgiveness of the $25,000 promissory note from Lisbon Emergency to the Town of Lisbon dated June 28, 2007, and to authorize the town manager to execute all documents necessary to complete the transaction with the intent to sell the property.
I need a second.
Second it.
All in favor? Again, 7-0. Next.
I would like to make a motion to approve the purchase and sale agreement for the town to acquire Real Estate at 241 Lisbon Street from DEM Properties LLC for the purchase price of $80,000 contingent on the completion of due diligence satisfactory to the town, including Phase 1 environmental assessment.
I need a second to that motion.
Second.
All in favor? Again, 7-0. Next, please.
I'd like to make a motion to confirm the appointment of Thomas Martin Jr. as Public Works Director with a starting salary of $80,000, 3 weeks vacation commencing January 1st, and professional development to attend APWA and MBTA meetings.
I need a second.
I'll second that.
All in favor? Opposed? 6-1. Next,
That's it.
motion to adjourn.
I'll make that motion.
Second.
All in favor?
And we are out at 9:04.
Thank you.
I thought it was going to be a lot longer. Once I saw the executive session
I
schedule,
know.
I was like, oh,
You
no.
weren't joking when you said we were going to have
We're
votes.
at half an hour for the regular meeting.
Thank you.
Was there anything given to us that we need to give back?
I didn't think you
Just
went into a
these.
full half hour.
Right, yeah, it was just before.
Okay, Krista.
Thank you. Drive safe.
See ya.
Oh, where is
That was it?
We're still going out. Kill this.
Still alive, you mean?
Yes.